Today, let's bring in our panel, syndicated radio host Hugh Hewitt, Matt Bennett, former deputy assistant to the president for intergovernmental affairs under Bill Clinton, and co-founder of Third Way, and Annie Linsky, White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Good evening to all of you. Happy Friday. Let's get this show on the road. So let's start with what's happening abroad and President Trump's comments in the Oval Office today. Hugh, I'll come to you first. He's considering these sanctions on banking in Russia. Let's pull up the Truth Social that he put out today. He said that based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I'm strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. So we've seen sanctions before. I mean, President Biden tried this to try to avert, the war on Ukraine, to try to stop the war on Ukraine. It didn't work. How might this be different?
Putin knows that President Trump is very, very serious. Trump ordered the execution, basically, of 200 Wagner expeditionary forces that came at Americans in Syria. He ordered the cutoff of the LNG. He knows, Putin knows, that when Trump threatens him, it's a real threat backed up by a real tough man. So I don't know that President Zelensky quite knows that yet, but getting them both to understand that is, I think, a very important thing. I think he's getting it done.
Annie, we've got this big meeting happening next week where Ukrainian officials will meet with White House officials in Saudi Arabia. What needs to happen?
Yeah, that meeting was referenced today. I was in the Oval Office with the president when he made those remarks. And he brought up his national security advisor, who sort of was put on the spot to talk about that very meeting. And he said that things are looking like they're on track. So some of the public noise, I think, he was signaling that there's some smoothness behind the scenes, and his take was that things are kind of, as he said, back on track, going on track.
Okay, we'll see. Matt, obviously Iran also came up, and the president made somewhat of an ominous threat here. Let's listen to it together.
We're down to final strokes with Iran. That's going to be an interesting time, and we'll see what happens. But we're down to the final moments. We're at final moments. Can't let them have a nuclear weapon. I'm not speaking out of strength or weakness. I'm just saying I'd rather see a peace deal than the other. But the other will solve the problem.
We're in the final moments. What did you make of that? I mean, some of these similar threats, he was nodding his head, were directed at Hamas, too, and now he's not so happy with the way that things are going there.
Right. I mean, one never knows with President Trump. He kind of makes threats. He walks up the line. He walks back. We've seen that on the tariffs a bunch of times. He threatened Greenland in the the speech the other night before Congress and said, "Well, we're going to get it one way or the other." He's threatened our allies. He's threatened Ukraine. He threats a lot of countries. It isn't clear to me at all what he means. Is it going to be military action? Is it going to be something else? Look, we all need to hope that he can pressure Iran to back off of their nuclear program. But the efforts that he made in the first term with North Korea really didn't work. He tried his letters of love with the president of North Korea, and that didn't work. I'm a little skeptical about this one.
Okay, well, we'll see what Iran does, if they are threatened at all by what he said today. I know, Hugh, you want to add to that?
Well, I want to add that a B-52, an Israeli F-35, and an Israeli F-15 did a training mission this week together. That's about as signal as it can get.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump back to, go ahead.
The only thing I would say here is we're talking about Iran giving up nuclear weapons or stopping their pursuit of nuclear weapons. I mean, one thing you can look at is history. Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons, and right now they're under attack. And so I think this is a reason that if you do not want the Iranians to pursue nuclear weapons, you need to be able to keep promises, and these countries need to feel like they'll be secure without them.
Annie, I'll come back to you for tariffs as we head towards domestic policy. I think that's what the name of the game was this week. Everybody talked about tariffs. Nobody wanted to talk about tariffs. So this jobs report came out today. We saw Doge's effects. Unemployment's up to 4% now. The president says he's okay with that because he's hoping that his tariffs will bring in better jobs. What do you make of what he said today?
Well, I mean, The issue with tariffs, the president was going to, as you pointed out, he was going to enact tough tariffs. He gave automakers a reprieve, and then he gave everybody a reprieve for a month. And that is related to some of the economic data that he's hearing from his staff. I mean, one thing that the president understands is inflation. And so you have some of his economic staffs saying that, look, there's a possibility that these tariffs are going to lead to higher prices. And I think that the president is in this moment where two things are colliding. He believes in tariffs, that's something very real for him, and he's also very aware of the pain that inflation causes and the political damage that it can cause.
Obviously, this is kind of a gamble, and we'll see how it plays out for the White House and for this president. I have to get to this report from the New York Times because it dropped this afternoon, and it was kind of something that I think a lot of us were waiting for. We wanted to get inside the room when Elon Musk is there with President Trump and all the cabinet secretaries. What do they really think? And here's a piece from the New York Times here. This is about a meeting with Marco Rubio and Elon Musk, and they're discussing cuts. And it says, seated diagonally opposite across the elliptical mahogany table, Elon Musk was letting Mr. Rubio have it, accusing him of failing to slash his staff. Mr. Musk was not being truthful, Mr. Rubio said. What about the more than 1,500 State Department officials who took early retirement and buyouts? Didn't they count as layoffs? After the argument dragged on for an uncomfortable time, Mr. Trump finally intervened to defend Mr. Rubio as doing a great job. And he said later that Trump said that there was no clash at all between Musk and Rubio. Q, how do you see what's going on here? Because some of these secretaries are feeling a little uncomfortable, according to this report, including Doug Collins over at the PA.
I like a Sparky meeting.
Okay.
I think a
We all
Sparky
do.
meeting is what makes for a very good meeting, and I'll bet you that everyone walked away with a very clear understanding of what the president likes, which is conflict between strong people. Secretary Rubio is very smart. Elon Musk is very smart. I wish that was on tape. We could do that 24/7 role.
I would love
watch
for it
that.
to be on tape. Matt, I'll give you the final word because sometimes I read these articles and I think if they've got 5 sources, somebody is trying to get Elon Musk to go away within the White House.
Oh, no question. I mean, cabinet secretaries do not like babysitters, and the Doge guys are their babysitters, and they're pushing them to do things that they don't want to do. And I think, importantly, the reason that Musk is becoming more unpopular and it's having an effect on Trump's popularity is because he's bringing chaos where Trump promised order. And that's the opposite of what he campaigned on.
We'll see if we can get any more stories from inside the Oval Office. Thank you all for being here with us.